I'm 71. And apparently, that's the age when your own children start treating you like a fragile houseplant. Last week, my daughter Megan stood in my kitchen with that overly gentle voice people use when they're about to do something outrageous. Del, we've been thinking, maybe it's time you considered a retirement home. A retirement home. Me. A man who still fixes his own sink, grills his own steaks, and mows his lawn better than half the 20-year-olds on my street. I stared at her, wondering if she'd mix me up with some other old man who actually needs help opening jars. But she kept going. It's safe. It's social. They have activities. Activities. Please. I've survived 2 wives, a mortgage crisis, and a bowling league full of men who cheat on the scorecards. I've had enough activities for several reincarnations. Still, I nodded, slowly, thoughtfully, as if I were accepting my tragic fate. Inside, though, I felt that familiar spark, the one that gets me into trouble but makes life exciting. Right there, while she rambled about structured environments, I turned to you, my loyal listeners, because you always get me better than my own family. Subscribe, hit the like button, and tell me in the comments how old you are and where you're from. For you, it's just a small thing. But for me, it's the reason I keep telling these stories. Then I looked back at Megan and said, you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe it's time. Her eyebrows practically launched into orbit. She expected a fight, not surrender. What she didn't know was that I already had a plan brewing, and the next morning I set it into motion. When Megan arrived at the retirement home later that day, she didn't find me sitting there with a sad suitcase. She walked into something she absolutely did not expect. The retirement home Megan picked was called Silver Pines, which sounded less like a home for seniors and more like a discount candle scent. But I wasn't planning on moving in, no. I had a far more interesting mission. I got there at 8 in the morning, rolling in with a thermos of strong coffee, my old portable speaker, and the confidence of a man who knows he's about to cause trouble. The good kind. The receptionist, a cheerful woman named Stacy, looked at me over her glasses. Mr. Lawson, are you checking in today? Checking in? I laughed. Honey, I'm checking you in for the wildest morning you've had all year. She blinked like I'd just spoken ancient Greek. But I'd already spotted the recreation room behind her big windows, comfy chairs, a TV frozen on a weather channel nobody was watching. Perfect venue. I walked in like I owned the place. 3 residents looked up from a puzzle that had exactly 1 piece left. One man, Ron, stared at me and said, "You lost?" "No," I said, dropping my speaker on the table. "But I'm about to help you all find something. Your morning energy." I put on some old Motown just loud enough to wake up the wallpaper, and to my surprise, the residents perked up like sunflowers. Ron started tapping his foot. A woman named Judith got up and said, "Well, if the new guy is starting a party, I'm not missing it." Within minutes, more people wandered in, drawn by the music or maybe just bored enough to embrace chaos. Someone brought orange juice. Someone else wheeled in a cart with muffins. Judith insisted I wear a paper party hat she'd borrowed from last week's bingo night. I didn't argue. And just when the room was full of laughter, clapping, and a man named Carl trying to moonwalk with his walker, that's when Megan arrived. The automatic doors slid open, and she froze like a deer spotting disco lights. Her father hadn't come to be admitted, he'd come to host a morning celebration at a retirement home he didn't even live in. And the moment our eyes met, her jaw dropped so low, I could have slipped a muffin into it. She didn't know yet the real surprise was still coming. Megan marched into the recreation room like a woman storming the gates of a castle, except the castle was full of retirees wearing paper hats, and the gates were decorated with Judith's homemade banner that read Happy Tuesday, because apparently she makes those for every day of the week. "Dad," Megan hissed under her breath. "What? What is this?" I took a sip of orange juice from a cup with cartoon penguins on it. "Sweetheart, this is what you called a safe and social environment. I'm just socializing." Behind her, Carl attempted another moonwalk. His walker squeaked like an old violin, and Megan flinched every time it screeched. "Someone stop him before he dislocates something," she whispered. Judith patted her arm. "Relax, dear. Carl's been dislocating things since 1984. Megan pulled me aside, lowering her voice. You were supposed to come here for an evaluation, not. She waved her hand in a circle, indicating the chaos. Not this circus. Circus? I grinned. Honey, circus is charge admission. This is a free community event. Her face went red, not angry red, more like the red of someone realizing they've lost control of a situation that was never theirs to manage. Dad, people are staring, she whispered. I looked around. Everyone was definitely staring, but with huge smiles, clapping along as Ron and another woman tried to start a conga line around the room. Yeah, I said softly. They're staring because they're having fun. That's allowed, last I checked. Something shifted in Megan's expression, then a tiny crack in her irritation. Maybe she wasn't expecting to see me laughing, connecting, actual people enjoying my presence instead of worrying about me. But before she could react, Stacy, the receptionist, burst into the room, slightly breathless. Mr. Lawson, your daughter called earlier to arrange your intake paperwork, but I didn't realize you'd already started a celebration. Spontaneous morale. Building session. I corrected. Write that down. Maybe the board will give me a discount. Megan pressed her fingers to the bridge of her nose. Dad, please, can we talk outside? I was about to answer, but then something unexpected happened. The residents began chanting, Let him stay. Leave him alone. We like him better than the Tuesday meditation instructor. Megan stared at the room full of supporters like she'd walked into an alternate universe. And she hadn't even heard my real plan yet, the one that would truly make her rethink everything she assumed about my old age. Megan finally dragged me into the hallway, the door closing behind us just enough to muffle Motown and Carl's victorious, Watch this spin! I folded my arms, leaning against the wall like a man entirely at peace with the chaos he just created. Megan, meanwhile, looked like she needed a paper bag to breathe into. Dad, what are you doing? She whispered sharply. Living, I replied. Try it sometime. It's not bad. She groaned. You were supposed to meet the director. Fill out forms, maybe take a tour, not turn the place into a senior discotheque. I raised a finger. Correction. It became a discotheque. Because nobody here has had fun since the Nixon administration. She didn't laugh. I did. Someone had to. Megan leaned closer. Del, we're worried about you. There it was. The sentence every older parent hears eventually, the one that lands heavy even when it comes from love. I didn't snap back this time. I just looked at her. What exactly are you worried about? I asked quietly. She hesitated. You live alone. You forget appointments. You fell last month. I waved that off. I tripped on the cat. You don't have a cat! I paused. Oh. Then that was just gravity being rude. She didn't smile, but her eyes softened just a little the way they used to when she was a kid, and saw me pretend to cry after stepping on a Lego. She put her hand on my arm. Dad, we're not trying to get rid of you. We want you to be safe. I get that, I said. But safety doesn't mean locking myself in a room and waiting for life to expire like a yogurt cup. She sighed deeply, and for a moment we just stood there, a tired daughter, a stubborn father, both trying their best. The door suddenly opened, and Judith popped her head out. Excuse me, she said politely, but Ron wants to know if your father is coming back inside. He started a conga line and we need a leader with working hips. Megan blinked. He does not have working. I lifted my knee. Watch it. These hips still have a couple of parades left in them. Judith winked. I knew it. Megan looked from Judith to me, to the room behind them, bursting with laughter. Something inside her shifted again, maybe confusion, maybe jealousy that I was genuinely having fun. But she didn't yet know the next thing I was about to tell her, something that would flip her entire perspective upside down. She hadn't heard the reason I came early to the retirement home, and she definitely wasn't ready for it. I walked Megan a few steps farther down the hallway, away from Judith's eager eyes and Carl's questionable dance ambitions. The music inside softened to a faint thump, 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 the heartbeat of a party no one had planned but everyone desperately needed. Megan crossed her arms, bracing herself like someone waiting for a dental appointment she didn't schedule. Okay, she said, exhaling. What's the big secret? Why are you really here so early? I looked at her for a long moment. Not as a stubborn old man defending his independence, but as her father, the one who used to carry her on his shoulders at 4th of July parades, the one who still remembers the smell of her strawberry shampoo when she was 10. Megan, I said quietly. I came early because I wanted to see what this place actually felt like. Without you hovering, without pressure. Used me. She blinked. You mean you were considering it? Considering? No. I shook my head. Evaluating, yes. If a day comes when I can't handle things on my own, I'd want to choose a place that doesn't smell like soggy oatmeal and despair. Her shoulders dropped, not in disappointment, but in surprise. Del, I didn't realize you were thinking ahead like that. I snorted. I didn't raise 3 kids just to forget how to plan for the future. Besides, I pointed to the recreation room door. If this place can survive Carl's moonwalk, it can probably survive me someday. For the first time all morning, Megan smiled. A real one. Soft around the eyes. The way her mother used to smile when she finally understood something I'd been trying to explain for years. I'm sorry, she said. I shouldn't have pushed so hard. I guess I just panic when I feel like you're slipping away. I placed a hand on her shoulder. I'm not slipping away. I'm slipping around. Big difference. A laugh escaped her, unexpected and genuine. Then she looked at me, head tilted. So, all this, the music, the dancing, the muffins, this was your way of evaluating the place? Absolutely, I said. Any retirement home worth living in should be able to handle an impromptu block party before 9 a.m. Right then the door burst open and Ron appeared, slightly sweaty, holding a paper plate piled with muffins. Sir, he said formally, your presence is requested. The conga line collapsed without your leadership and Judith is blaming gravity. Megan stared at him. This is normal here? Ron shrugged. Well, it is now. She looked at me again, a father in a paper hat, somehow running a miniature festival inside a place she assumed would dim my spirit. But she still didn't know the final truth, the one I'd been preparing since last night, the thing that would either make her laugh, cry, or possibly both at once. Because I didn't just visit Silver Pines early. I left something here, waiting for the perfect moment. And that moment was getting very, very close. I stepped back into the recreation room with Megan trailing behind me like a detective trying to understand a crime scene committed entirely out of enthusiasm. The music was still going, but now someone had switched it to a lively swing tune. Carl was no longer moonwalking, thankfully. But he was attempting something that looked suspiciously like tap dancing while holding onto his walker for dear life. Judith immediately spotted us and clapped her hands. He's back. The fun one, Megan choked. The fun one? I shrugged. What can I say? I'm versatile. Stacy hurried over with a clipboard pressed to her chest. Mr. Lawson, I'm so sorry. This isn't the way we normally... Stacy, I said, patting her arm. If this isn't normal, you might want to consider making it normal. People look 10 years younger already. Behind me, Ron shouted. That's because we're sweating. Turn down the thermostat. Someone else yelled. No, this is the first time I've felt alive since Reagan. Megan looked around the room. The laughter, the dancing, the controlled chaos, and slowly her expression changed. Not irritation, not panic. Something softer. Something like wonder. Dad, she said quietly. I didn't know people here could be like this. I lifted a muffin. People everywhere can be like this if you give them a good playlist and no supervision. She laughed, the real kind, the kind she used to have before life got heavy. Then she pointed at the corner. Why is there a piñata? I cleared my throat. Ah, yes, that. Last night, before I came here, I stopped by a party supply store. Not because I thought these people needed candy raining from the ceiling, but because I had a point to prove. A silly one, a symbolic one, maybe even a sentimental one. I walked over to the piñata, a bright blue donkey with a goofy grin, and tapped its side. I brought this. Megan stared. You... What? It's not for hitting, I explained. It's for opening. Isn't that the same thing? Not today. I carefully opened the flap at the bottom, revealing what I'd tucked inside before sunrise, a stack of handwritten cards, each one with a small message inside. Megan looked at me in disbelief. Del, what is this? I swallowed, suddenly feeling every one of my 71 years, but in the good, heavy, meaningful way. These are notes, I said softly. For your future. For your brother's future. For mine, if I ever live here someday. Thoughts I didn't want to say out loud, because they get lost in arguments. So I wrote them. Her face went still. Not shocked, not confused, moved. A single thought flickered across her eyes. Dad didn't come here to embarrass me. He came here because he's still thinking ahead, still loving us, even when we don't deserve it. But she didn't know yet what was inside the card with her name on it. And when she opened it, everything between us would shift. Megan stared at the piñata like it was a ticking bomb filled with family secrets. The room around us kept buzzing, Judith arguing with Carl about whether his tap dance routine counted as cardio, Ron fanning himself with a bingo card he'd stolen from some drawer, but Megan heard none of it. Her eyes were locked on that stack of handwritten cards sitting inside the bright blue donkey. Del, you wrote notes? She whispered. Of course I wrote notes, I said. Your generation texts feelings. Mine mails them. She picked up the first card, her name written on the front in the same sloppy handwriting I've had since the 70 seconds. Her fingers trembled just a little. I pretended not to notice. A father can be sensitive without humiliating his child. Do you want me to read it here? She asked. Up to you, I said. But Judith has big ears. She'll hear every word anyway. Judith shouted from across the room. I absolutely will. Megan opened the card slowly, like she was afraid it might dissolve. Inside was a short message, nothing dramatic, nothing poetic. Just the truth written simply, the way older folks do because we don't have time for fluff. Meg, if one day I have to leave my home, I want you to know it won't be because you failed me. It'll be because I want you to live your life without worrying that you're neglecting mine. Love me, visit me, but don't carry me on your shoulders. I'm still walking beside you, Dad. Her breath hitched a tiny, sharp inhale, and I felt it like someone tugging on a thread tied around my own chest. Dad, she murmured, eyes shining just a little. Not enough to cry, just enough to remind both of us we were still human. Before anything else could happen, Ron suddenly shouted, Hey! Who took my muffin? Carl lifted his hand. I thought it was community property. It had my name on it. You wrote your name on a muffin? I didn't want Stacy to steal this one. Megan wiped her eyes, half laughing, half sniffling. How is this place both chaotic and adorable? I leaned closer. You'd be surprised how many places get better when you let people be themselves. She looked around the room again, not as a daughter evaluating a retirement home, but as someone witnessing a small, unexpected pocket of joy where she least expected it. You really did all this just to understand the place? She asked. No, I said gently. I did it to understand how you see me, and to show you how I see myself. She bit her lip, nodding slowly. It landed every word, but she still hadn't opened the second thing I brought. The thing tucked safely in my jacket pocket, and once she saw it, it would change the entire direction of this day. Megan noticed the way I kept one hand tucked against my jacket, thumb pressed over the pocket like I was guarding something fragile. She narrowed her eyes, not suspicious, more curious, the way she used to look when she was little and saw me hiding birthday presents behind my back. What else did you bring? She asked softly. Oh, just something small, I replied. Dad, every time you say that, it turns out not to be small at all. She had a point. I once described a used boat as a little weekend project. It had 3 leaks and no motor. But this wasn't a disaster. This was something I'd been holding on to for months and never found the right moment to share. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, old, creased, and yellowed at the edges. Megan's face shifted immediately because she recognized the handwriting even before she unfolded it. Mom's handwriting. She froze. Is that? I nodded. Your mother wrote this the year before she passed. I found it tucked inside her cookbook. Megan held it like it might shatter. Why didn't you show us sooner? Because you weren't ready, I said. And maybe I wasn't either. She opened it slowly. Inside was a short note typical of your mother, direct and full of quiet warmth. If something ever happens to me first, please don't become lonely. The kids will hover. They love you, but don't let them smother you. Live. Be stubborn. Be joyful. If you ever choose a retirement home one day, let it be your choice, not theirs. Claire. Megan pressed the paper to her chest, eyes glistening. Mum, she knew we'd do this. She always did, I whispered. She could predict you kids better than weather forecasts. Megan let out a shaky laugh, half heartbreak, half nostalgia. Why did you bring it today? Because I wanted you to know I'm not fighting you. I'm not rebelling. I'm just doing what your mother asked me to do. Live on my own terms. Before we could say anything else, Stacy rushed over, panicked. Mr. Lawson, Carl has climbed onto a chair. Megan spun around. Why would he do that? Stacy wheezed. Because he said he's feeling the groove. From across the room, Carl shouted, Turn up the volume. These hips don't last forever. Megan covered her mouth, laughing through her tears. Del, I can't believe this is happening. Oh, believe it, I said. This is the most excitement Silver Pines has had in a decade. She looked at me, truly looked, and for the first time all morning, I saw no fear, no frustration, no guilt, just understanding. But she still didn't know what I had planned for the rest of the residents, the final piece of my surprise. And once it started, every single person in that room, including Megan, would remember it for the rest of their lives. The moment Megan tucked Mom's note safely into her purse, something in her posture changed. She wasn't guarding me anymore. She was standing with me, same height, same breath, same memory between us. A team again, like we hadn't been in years. But I wasn't done. I clapped my hands loudly enough to startle a man who'd fallen asleep in a recliner. All right, ladies and gentlemen, gather up, Judith whispered loudly to Carl. Oh, this is going to be good. He has announcement energy. Everyone moved toward the center of the room, some shuffling, some wheeling, some being nudged by neighbors who refused to let them miss the moment. Megan stayed beside me, half afraid, half amused. Silver Pines, I began, is a fine establishment, but every good establishment needs one thing. Ron raised his hand. Stronger coffee? No. Lower thermostat? No. More muffins? Also no, and stop hoarding them, Ron. I reached into my other pocket and pulled out a small remote. Stacy blinked. Mr. Lawson, what is that? A gift, I said proudly. For all of you. Then I pointed the remote toward the TV mounted on the wall, the one that had been showing weather reports all morning, and hit a button. Suddenly, the screen flickered. Then music started. Then images appeared, a whole slideshow I'd made the night before. Old photos I'd asked residents' families to send me earlier in the week. Pictures of them from their younger days, dancing in diners, posing beside classic cars, holding babies, playing baseball, laughing at backyard barbecues, kissing spouses long gone. The room fell silent. The wild, funny, chaotic energy softened into pure warmth. Judith pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. That's me. 1,964. Carl whispered. I had hair. Ron squinted. Is that my Corvette? Lord, look at me. I thought I was invincible. Still act like it, someone muttered. Quiet, Martha. Megan stared at me, stunned. Del, you made this? You think I only know how to throw parties? I said. Please. I also know how to edit pictures on a laptop at 2 a.m. with terrible back pain. One woman began crying softly. But not the sad kind, the grateful kind. The kind you let out when someone remembers a version of you the world forgot. Another man stood up straighter, as though watching his younger self reminded him his spine had once been proud. Then I said the part I'd been saving, the real reason behind everything I'd done that morning. You're not old, I told them. You're just older than some people, and you've lived more than all of them. The room erupted in applause. Even Stacy clapped, though she didn't know she was doing it until it was too late. Megan wiped her cheek with her thumb, shaking her head in disbelief. Del, I had no idea you were planning all this. Sometimes, I said, your father knows exactly what he's doing. The applause softened, the music played on, and everyone absorbed the moment, each of them remembering who they used to be, and realizing they were still that person. But Megan didn't know yet how this morning would end, because the last surprise was the most personal one, and it was meant just for her. When the slideshow finally faded into silence, the room stayed still for a few soft, golden seconds, the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, only full. Megan stood beside me, clutching her mother's note like it had become a missing piece she didn't know she'd needed. I leaned close. There's one more thing, I said quietly. She let out a half laugh. Del, how can there possibly be more? You've thrown a party, revived Motown, made Carl tap dance, smuggled a piñata into a retirement home, and emotionally rebuilt half the population of Silver Pines. Ah, I said, but this one is just between us. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Not old, not yellowed, new. Her name written on it in the same shaky handwriting I'd used on birthday cards since she was 6. She swallowed. For me? Read it, I said. It's short. I know your generation has the attention span of a goldfish. She nudged me in the ribs. Dad. She opened it. Inside was just one sentence. You don't need to save me, Meg. Just stay my daughter. She exhaled, long and deep, the kind of breath someone takes when a heavy weight finally melts off their shoulders. Then she stepped forward and hugged me, not the polite, quick hug she'd been giving me for years. A real one, tight, warm, the kind where both people remember who they used to be to each other. The residents clapped like we'd just won a ballroom dance competition. Judith dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Carl sniffed loudly. Beautiful. Now somebody fix the thermostat. Megan pulled back, smiling through tears. Del, I'm sorry. I pushed too hard. I was scared you'd... Fade. He shook my head. I'm not fading. I'm just aging. Very stylishly, might I add. She laughed. You really are impossible. Good. That's how you know I'm still me. We walked back into the room together. The music picked up again, lively and cheerful. Residents swayed, clapped, danced, argued the usual, but now Megan wasn't watching nervously from the corner. She was right in the middle of it, helping Carl off his chair, steadying him, laughing when he claimed the chair had moved on its own. For a moment, I just watched her, my daughter, finally seeing that growing older doesn't mean shrinking. It means choosing how to live the time you have left. Later, as we were leaving, she took my arm. Dad, she said softly, when the day comes and you decide to move somewhere like this, can I be the one who helps you? I patted her hand. Of course, as long as you understand one thing. What's that? I'm bringing my speaker. And Carl. She burst out laughing. Deal. We stepped outside into the bright morning sun. A father and daughter who'd argued, worried, misunderstood each other, and somehow still found their way back. Because aging isn't the end. It's just a new kind of beginning. And sometimes you have to throw a retirement home party to remind people you're still alive.